and welcome to the Live Young podcast. Today, I have my friend Carie Fund here, and I'm so excited to talk to her because we were just connecting and we met each other at a book conference a couple months ago in New York City. And I almost felt like so drawn to both her energy, magnetism, and this like really beautiful light that felt so grounded to me. And as I saw you across the room, and I kind of scooted over at some point to just like say hi. There was something about your presence that was you held space in a room where like it wasn't your room, it was someone else's conference, but you were so your strength, it just like shone through. So first of all, thank you for being that.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I'm honored.
And thank you for being so receptive to then me coming up and talking, and then everything that's sort of interplayed since. It's interesting when you meet people and you see, who they are, what they're doing, what they stand for, and it's not one-sided, because I feel so much of that from you too. So thank you for your support and everything, how you've shown up in just this short time of knowing you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I noticed you across the room too at that conference in New York last month, and it's so interesting that you said those beautiful things about me because even after everything I've been through and on my journey, I still have that imposter syndrome, and I still have that sense of like, am I worth all of these things, or even sitting in the room with these people? So when you came up to me, it meant so much, and I think we so easily connected because I feel like we both come from, we have these stories, and we really have sort of turned these painful things into our potential. And you just approached me, and you were so beautiful and authentic, and and honest. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can. I think that's something that the energy you just can't reject. It like sort of almost lit my light up even inside me more. So it was a pleasure meeting you, and I'm really honored to be here and speaking with you today, and everything that you're doing and offering, your beautiful voice and your authenticity. It means a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So before we start, I like to kind of just like close your eyes for a second and get really grounded, because I also know that whether you're listening or, you're watching this, life gets really chaotic, and something sometimes to just start anything, I think requires a moment to breathe. So maybe putting your hand on your heart, your hand on your low belly, your solar plexus, like this confidence center, and just feeling your seat in the chair, feeling your feet on the ground, and taking a really big breath into your low belly and letting it go, and knowing that no matter what, you're safe, you're guided, you're protected. And I hope that this conversation serves whatever you need today. So with that said, yeah, a moment to find calm in the chaos, I find really powerful. So Carie Fund. Carie speaks very beautifully eloquent about this idea of conscious parenting. And I know that's so much of your platform. And I also, as I've gotten to know you and seen you even share like a little bit deeper, sort of this journey of self-love, because to consciously parent, I believe you have to probably reclaim your own, life and sort of reparent yourself. So I wanted to start off with like, what does conscious parenting mean to you?
I think to me, coming from such a toxic upbringing that was filled with trauma, I think for me it was sort of the idea of being this gatekeeper to where my past and my pain doesn't parent my own children.
Mm.
And I sort of had that feeling before I even really knew what cycle breaking was or anything like that, or the idea that you even had the power to like break cycles or generational trauma. I sort of, I don't have a village. I don't really, my mother's not in my life. We're estranged for the past 15 years. I was blessed with two toxic parents. So my father respected my boundaries, and he is in my life with, and a grandparent to my children. My mom and I are estranged. So I really navigated this alone because I didn't have anyone teaching me how to be a mom or teaching me what it meant to be a parent or even be married. So I sort of just made the oath to myself I wouldn't be the parent that I had. And what does that mean exactly? So I knew it meant that I needed to heal all of the pain and traumas that I had. Because even when I was sort of thought I was healed, um, that, parenting is messy and your kids trigger even the healthiest moms and dads. Your kids trigger everyone, even nieces and nephews, they trigger everyone. So if you come from a place of trauma and pain, even when you think maybe you have healed everything, the kids will bring it out in you. They will find those little pain points that you have buried so deep down inside. And I started probably noticing that my kids are 9 and 6, and probably about 2 years ago is when I started noticing, wow, definitely being triggered in a way where I was just having flashbacks of my childhood and my womanhood. And I found myself, getting very emotional about things. And I realized I had a lot more work to do.
Hmm.
So that sort of put me on this healing journey that I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then so then let's go to the past, because you mentioned this traumatic upbringing and then, all of these things starting to echo in the past 2 years. But, did you grow up in Miami? Just like some context. Where did you grow up?
I grew up on a horse ranch in West Virginia. My parents were married very young, and they've been divorced ever since I can remember, probably 5 or so. Um,
Mm,
However, their divorce and their toxicity and their drama probably ended finally. I'm 46 now, probably when I was 42, in and out of courts, in and out of putting my brother and I in the middle. It's been a forever soap opera,
mhm,
and it pretty much has taken the front stage of both of our lives, until I became estranged. And, my dad decided to respect my boundaries if he wanted to be in my children's lives. So it's really always been about their terrible relationship, their toxicity, their pain, their drama, and everything in between. I never really had space for my own feelings. My childhood was really um, about them. I was sort of parentified, so I found myself sort of navigating their chaos and trying to calm their storms and things like that as young as I can remember. So yeah, it's always really been about them. So I noticed and through my 20s and things like that as well, until I finally decided to become estranged with my mom, because I realized I was just sort of like this prisoner in her emotional pain. It was just every day was about the same thing over and over. And I realized in my 20s the toxicity was really affecting me. I mean, I had had an eating disorder probably since I was 11 years old, and I didn't really even admit that to myself until I was in my 20s.
mhm,
It's amazing how you can do things to yourself and you can really not love yourself or have compassion for myself, and sort of how you can treat yourself and not even realize the harm that you're doing. So it took me probably 10 years to even admit to myself, like, wow, I think I'm bulimic, or
mhm,
wow, maybe I have a binge disorder. And then I realized like I didn't trust anyone. I trusted no one. I dated people that I could only control. I was very cold and standoffish. I threw everything into my work. I was a raging perfectionist, really seeking love and validation from everyone. And it was never enough. Even when I did a fabulous job, or I was doing this or I was doing that, it was never really enough. Because I didn't realize that the validation and the love really had to come from myself. It's
mhm.
absolutely an inside job. And it probably took me until 5 years ago to even
Yeah,
realize everything I was doing still was never going to be enough, until I really forgave myself for treating myself the way that I did, not setting
yeah,
boundaries sooner, because I didn't know. I sort of, no one taught me this. I sort of just found, I started realizing things weren't working. So I would try this and this works. So then it was just all trial and error. And
yeah.
I'm really thankful to the universe and God that I've ended up where I've ended up.
Yeah, I think that's, first of all, thank you for sharing that and all of the context. I think like that's sort of my point in everything that I speak to. It's like I believe, of course, self-love is an inside job, but the secret to self-love, in my opinion, is you have to learn yourself to love yourself. And learning and understanding and reflecting on the childhood and then the symptoms of trauma being an eating disorder, perfectionism, external validation, dating anyone that you could control because you felt so out of control. And, even to the detail of like bulimia, bulimia is, I believe, a product of being gaslit. And when you're gaslit, and like you just want to empty that energy because you don't know where else to put it. And it is also an element of control. And, I get such a chill thinking about like the younger versions of us that just needed love, that just wanted love, just wanted to be seen. And as a product of not feeling that way, going to that place of self-harm. So the fact that you've found this way to hold yourself and forgive yourself for being, so tirelessly, self-affronting, hurting yourself to that extent. And similarly, like, I always see trauma as like, if you don't have anyone else to blame, you blame yourself. Because
Yeah.
as a child, you don't know where to put that pain. So why I think this is important and it's so special that you share so openly is you are this like gorgeous goddess light with this beautiful family and this platform and all the things. And yet to become that, you've had to face so much of what wasn't, like so much feeling that maybe the external world didn't see you as, and then putting on this mask of the perfection of, all of these things. So if you're listening to this too, and you're going through this cycle of trying so badly to be seen, to be heard, to be loved by like hurting your body or picking people that don't pick you, like, let us both tell you right now, like, you are so not alone in that journey.
So not alone. I mean, honestly, it sometimes breaks my heart to think that for decades, I felt so alone. I felt such shame. Shame keeps us so silent. And I was an A+ student in terms of perfectionism. My mask, I mean, the perfect, fake, perfect woman you
Mm.
would ever meet. I would be one way. You would think that I had it all, decorated and externally, I had a lot. Internally, I had nothing. I was absolutely broken and carrying suffering for decades. I mean, from a young child all the way through my 20s, and even almost to my early 30s before I really admitted to myself that maybe you're not everything that they told you that you are. Maybe you do deserve more. Maybe you are meant for more and you are worthy. And no one was going to help me with that. So, everything that I do with my platforms and the book that I'm writing and my sharing, it's not for attention. It's not for me to, I don't hate my parents. I have compassion for them. Um, and I love them, but I love myself more. And if no one's going to stand up for me, when your parents are your first heartbreak, it's extremely difficult and crippling because you do have to reparent yourself because one, they didn't parent me. And two, when you feel like your parents don't love you and they've broken your heart and hurting me doesn't hurt them, it sort of makes you scared of the world because how would I ever trust somebody that, I would be meeting to love me and not break me if my own parents, the ones that gave me life, willing and capable of doing that. So you come from a very fearful place in life. But at the end of the day, the choice was, am I going to is this my life? Is this my life? The faking it, the, living not wholeheartedly, not knowing even what authenticity meant, not even knowing like intuition and having like inner peace and power. Like, am I just going to go the rest of my life like this? Or is there something I can do? And I think I share all of this because it's not for attention. It's not to blame anyone in my life. It is to help people realize we have a choice. We
Mhm.
always, it doesn't matter if you start your healing in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, you're never too old. It doesn't matter how busy we are. It doesn't matter if the people that hurt you never say they're sorry. It all comes from ourselves and knowing how much power we have to really create the life we've always imagined and the life we've always dreamed of.
Yeah.
And when you make that choice, that's where the work begins. It's not about focusing on the people in your past and getting them to do this or to do that or to help you or to even the apologies. It's to realize you have all the power and control to do everything that it takes to create the life that you've dreamed of.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. And it's interesting, different upbringings or backgrounds. So much of my experience, trauma was outside of the home. And as a result, I never felt safe. And then the blame became blaming the people that couldn't protect me. And this was all subconscious. But what I've come to understand is like, and similar to what you said, like you can't change your past, but you can change the way you see your past. Because even like as much pain as I've endured, my body's endured, and then I put on myself as a result, I've really, and this is part of the healing, and most people won't understand this, particularly in my story of like a lot of sexual trauma. And there's never any excuse for any of that. And it was all of that pain that made me who I am. and not letting that break me, because it almost did so many times, and I picked myself off the floor and decided to keep going. And same with you, committing to knowing that there was possibility outside of this space. And I think the challenge there is like the way you speak to it, and as I've come to understand, it took me, I didn't understand this until very recently, like that I had very strong and severe PTSD and post-traumatic stress disorder. It leaves you in a space where nothing is safe, no one can be trusted. You're always looking behind you, you're always on high alert, you're always hyper vigilant. And in a way too, there's a superpower there, because like I always know what's going on. I know, through the walls.
Yeah.
And similarly, in personal relationships, it makes things very challenging because you don't necessarily know who you can let in. So I'm curious, two things. My first question is, because you go back to this perfectionist part of you, and you
Uh,
posted something recently about, this eating disorder in New York City. Like, who were you? Like, where you lived in New York? How did you get there? Was it for a job? Like, take us back to like mid-20s,
sure.
Carie.
So I graduated high school, went to college in West Virginia, because I knew I would go to grad school eventually. And I knew once I left, I would really leave and not really come home. I moved to New York in my 20s. I went to grad school at NYU, ironically, for clinical nutrition. And I even specialized in eating disorders. Yeah, I mean, talk about a mask. And then when I graduated NYU, I decided I wanted to work in the beauty industry, probably another terrible place for me to put myself, because it's all about glamour and perfectionism. And it's really not such a beautiful industry when you work behind the scenes. So there I went from clinical nutrition, when I was a secret, bulimic. Then I worked in the beauty industry, which probably didn't fuel my confidence and self-esteem, because I was wearing a mask and suffering from perfectionism, and constantly focusing on external things rather than all of the brokenness that I was internally carrying. And then from there, I worked for probably over a decade in the beauty industry in New York City. On the side, I ended up writing some women's fiction, a couple novels, and then I met a boy. And interesting enough, it's a very funny story. It was like a rainy New York City night. I was at Balthazar. I finally had the courage, after several martinis, to break up with a narcissist that I'd been dating for 2 years. The first person I ever dated that I didn't have control over. And he was such a narcissist, such an unhealthy, toxic relationships. And I think that probably was my breaking point, where a lot of my pain, a lot of not being respected and listened to and having the space for myself really brought up everything from my childhood. So he sort of broke me, but then it sort of like opened me in a
Mm,
way where I stood up for myself, and everything I said to him to that night, I should have said to my parents a long time ago. Got into a cab crying, called a girlfriend and told her, like, I finally am done. I can't wait to be single. I want to go and find myself and just figure all of this out. She tells me to come over. I walk into her apartment and she has a friend visiting. And that friend is now my husband.
oh my
I,
God.
I walk into the door, and I'm telling this story because for all those people who think you have to be this, you have to have it all together, to attract the love of your life, you have to be in a certain place in your life. You definitely do. You have to have the awareness, but nothing has to be so figured out, because when I walked into that apartment that night, I had nothing figured out. I was a complete mess. And this man saw something in me where I don't know, he smiled at the thought of that anyone would ever break my heart. And then we all went out to dinner that night, and he made me laugh so much. And he asked me out to dinner months later, which happened to be Valentine's Day weekend. And we've been together ever since. It's been 15 years later, 2 kids. We've moved into a house in Miami. And it's so interesting because, when he looked at me over those first 6 months, I knew I had this self-awareness to know that he saw something in me that I should be seeing. So I went on this whole journey of, really giving myself the space, even though we were dating, is finding the space to figure out like why I'm in pain and why I'm suffering. I didn't want to be a person with an eating disorder anymore. I wanted to be better. Not really so much for him. I think he triggered that, but for myself, because when someone actually sees something in you, like sees who you are, because my parents never did, like
Mhm.
me think I am worth a lot more than I've ever given myself credit for. Um, and unfortunately, like I didn't have other family members or like my brother, like I don't know, he lit something in me that made me think I have work to do and I'm worth the work. So I went on this whole journey, and that following year is when I really gave my mom an ultimatum, which she didn't respect, and I broke up with her. You know, kids are very loyal to their parents. It's really a one-way street. It should be a two-way street. When you come from a healthy home, it is a two-way street. But when you come from a toxic upbringing, it was a very one-way street in my life, and until it wasn't, until I broke up with her, and it's been 14 years. And really, that estrangement, and I don't promote estrangement, that is, but I do promote empowerment. That estrangement gave me such space. It turned off all the noise that she
Mm,
had been drowning me with for decades. It turned it off, and it became so clear that I literally could hear myself. I was like, wow, is that my inner voice? Is this my intuition? Like,
wow.
all of these things that I had never used before were present in my life. So I just kept using them and listening to myself, and not worrying about the guilt of like, oh, but she's your mom, and all of those things. You know, society puts so much pressure on us as the kids, when the pressure should really be on the adults in the situation. And I just ignored it, and I just kept pushing forward no matter how hard it was. I kept pushing forward. I kept walking the walk and doing the self-talk. And it's been 14 years. And honestly, I know some people who can't imagine this. It's been a blessing, the estrangement. It really has, because I would not be who I am today if that noise was constantly in my ear.
Mm.
It's, you know, to have your own inner critic and then to have your mother be your biggest critic. I don't know who I would have been today if I hadn't made the decision to
That's
create that estrangement. And it's sad to say that, but honestly, I'm beyond grateful, because if without that estrangement and that empowerment, I would not have had the power to say to my father, these are my boundaries and these are my rules, these are my children. And I would not have been able to speak to my father like that. I'd never spoken to my father like that. And he respected them. I mean, he
mm,
lived 5 minutes away from me. He moved from West Virginia. He's a great grandfather to my kids. The father, you know, I never had, but that's okay. That's okay. My children have a grandparent that's amazing, and that's okay. It's okay. It almost heals some of the wounds from my, you know, me and my father. It's
mm.
okay, you know?
I think there's so much there. First, I think this idea of trusting, you walked into this at first, you called a boundary. You broke up with someone who wasn't healthy in any way. And that was like probably the first time you really chose you. You
Yeah.
really like took back some power and said, I'm worthy of more. And then this idea of, I so deeply believe in a greater power because I wouldn't be here without that. Like, and I don't believe in coincidence. And then you walking into this apartment and a man just seeing you. Because
Yeah.
what I believe is that oftentimes, relationships are mirrors and they offer reflection. Relationship, even with your kids, you're triggered by like whatever is not still healed in you. But in intimacy, I believe, whatever we don't like in our partner, we haven't yet really accepted within ourselves. But you walking into the apartment and seeing this man who saw you in love, like with love, in light, with possibility and capacity, like that sounds like started another soul journey for you to almost want to be both better for yourself and better for this person who you didn't even know what was yet.
100%. And he still loves to tell this joke that 4 months after seeing each other that I tried to break up with him. And I don't remember, but he wasn't living in New York at the time. He was traveling a lot to come see me. And he says that I called one day and was like, I think this is moving really fast. And I don't remember this, but he got on a flight the next day and came to New York and stayed in a hotel, and called me and was like, I'd like to take you to dinner. I would love to talk. And and then since then it was like, I don't really remember that, but I do believe it, because I probably was terrified, like being like really trusting someone, and be like being loved, I think was terrifying, because I've
Mhm.
always had boyfriends, but there were people I could always control and like keep at a distance and never worrying about them having to hurt me. And then I don't know, I think I was in such a bad place in my life that I needed to date the narcissist to really to break me. I needed to really completely be broken to really, really wake up and realize the compassion I didn't have for myself, the way I was treating myself and my body, and to really just own up to everything that was going on in my life. And I
Yeah.
think when you can really be honest with yourself, it is so hard. Um, but every day is like an opportunity to create these little shifts. And where I was 2 years ago, I was definitely really into my healing journey, but I still was not being honest with myself, because
Mm.
still very much a perfectionist. I was an extreme helicopter mom. So that just shows me I was still living in some fight or flight. Even after being in and having a beautiful marriage, there was still work to do
Mm,
because it all comes down to us and that being an inside job. Um, I realized that I was being a helicopter mom. I was controlling my kids. I was scared tragedy or anything would happen to them because I still didn't feel completely worthy of having this beautiful family. I still thought,
mm,
oh, the universe or God or something's going to happen and take all of this away from me. Maybe my mother was right. So
mm.
I still realized there was a lot of stuff buried deep down that I needed to work on. So little shifts, self-care, self-love, whatever you want to call it. Talking to your partner or a therapist or a trusted friend, just saying these things out loud just to let them out and so you can dissolve them. I mean, the tiniest little steps, every day. It's like
Yeah,
it's
and believing that it's possible, because I think too, it's like when you come from so much pain and you're
yeah,
wired to believe that there's something like lurking around the corner to hurt
yeah,
you,
yeah,
then you do attract that, in the younger years or wherever you are in your life to validate that truth. Because whether you think you can or not, you're right. Whether he's bad or good, like whatever you think, you're going to believe. And so it's just so beautiful to hear this journey. And even I too dated a narcissist, many narcissists. And it's been interesting for me to admit, and I'm saying this about myself, nothing about you. There was narcissism that was living in me that attracted that partner. There
yeah,
was such a deep seated self hate to both receive that kind of, energy and also to reflect, even call that person in, because I wasn't a narcissist, but I probably had narcissistic tendencies because I had such deep seated trauma
mhm,
that, because narcissism is it's really deep self-hate.
yeah,
Like, and it's not, narcissists show up as like confident and whatever, super successful.
yeah,
I dated all the guys who ran all the hedge funds, like all
yeah,
of them,
yeah,
and all the narcissists. And what they showed in me was like how much deep self-hate I had. And so just like you, I mean, too, I was like, it's funny you say Balthazar, this guy lived on Spring Street and, right. And I lived on Hudson and Spring. So, and my studio was on Spring and uh, Lafayette, whatever. So I would walk up and Spring Street. And the last time I saw this one particular narcissist was I kept this gown. I bought this beautiful gown from London to go to his black tie, like formal thing for his fund. And I left in his apartment because like I didn't need it after. And he had this other girlfriend who would come and stay with him. And she would stay there and they wouldn't include me in dinner. And there was something very strong in me that really knew that she really liked him. It was not, I don't know that there was anything more there. Anyways, I finally like brought it up to him for the third time because I brought it up 3 times and I was trying to maintain this boundary of like, choose me, see me, love me. And he finally said to me, he's like, don't ever bring that up again. I would choose her over you any day. And I forgot the best part. She like tried on this red gown, like when I wasn't there. And so I took the gown finally and I just took and I just left. In that leaving, that moment, it was like this choice of like, I finally chose me. I could no longer accept this behavior from him or
yeah.
from myself. Because every time I was in that experience, I was abandoning myself just like I had felt so abandoned, in my younger years.
100%. I like that you say that you bring up this topic of abandoning because that's the thing when whether it's a relationship or a parent relationship or a friendship or a boyfriend or girlfriend, if you have to abandon yourself, then you have to realize that's not love. If the only way my mother and I would still have a relationship is if I abandoned myself and allowed her to continue her stories and her way of being and me, accompanying that. She was the type of narcissist where they call like a covert narcissist. Like people were always like, oh my gosh, poor her, the victim, the victim. She was very good at that, which always made me look like the bad daughter. Like it was a whole,
Mind
became
fuck.
the
Yeah.
outcast in the family. But I think it's a good reminder for everyone listening that if you have to abandon yourself in any relationship, that's like a little ding to, pay attention to what's happening because love, whether it's friendships or relationships, don't ask or require you to abandon who you are.
Right.
They allow you to have space for your feelings and to love yourself. It shouldn't be painful. So that's
Yeah.
a reminder. Also, another great reminder is that Carrie and Olivia didn't even know each other, and we were living so close to each other. So for people who feel alone on their journeys, whether you're on a healing journey and or you're just really coming into pain, and how you can turn that into your power of potential, the streets are full of women like us that
Right.
you are passing on a daily basis. They may not look like they are in pain or suffering, or they're on some healing journey, or they had any kind of trauma in their life. Pain does not discriminate against anyone. It doesn't matter what you look like, what you have, where you live. So know that her and I were within blocks of each other, and we could have used each other probably back then.
Yeah, it's so interesting too. It's funny you said, you were this like undercover eating disorder in, as disguised as a nutrition or whatever, that I mean, I went to culinary school as an anorexic, bulimic, to control food. The masochism was that deep.
Yeah,
I could surround myself with. I loved dinner parties and all these things. And like we were like making pork chops, everything laden in butter. And I would like go to the corner store at lunchtime and like eat blow pops and drink kombucha.
yeah,
And then like eat a big dinner at night. Like I had my control all around. Like so and like love food and love restaurants and like go out with all of these chefs like in my early 20s and just wouldn't eat anything all day so I could have this beautiful like ribeye at night with like a whiskey on the rocks and then wake up in the morning to run 5 miles.
yeah,
It was just like this control and the way that if you've come from a place of feeling out of control, which I think most people have, if they can recognize and really be honest, start to notice in your life where you're gripping onto anything you can control, as
yeah,
opposed to actually like facing it. Because it's never about the thing. It wasn't about culinary school or the food. It was about all of this pain that was like buried deep inside me that I couldn't control. So I was controlling everything I could, be it a relationship or the way that I moved, the way that I ate. And I think about it a lot, and I don't know if you do, but like everything you do, as you say, these little acts, everything, in my opinion, can be an act of self-love. The way that you eat, the way that you catch your reflection in the mirror, and instead of going somewhere negative, you just like say, "Hey, beautiful." Like the way, and too, I think about children a lot, and I'm single, so that's why I love hearing about your relationship and how this came into life. I think about it too, like would you do that to your child? Like I made a white sweet potato last night and I was out late and hungry when I got home and like it was like an afterthought. I'd eaten dinner and it was like the one thing in my fridge and I nuked it in the microwave and it wasn't good. It was just this like potato to like fill me up. And I thought about it this morning because I was like, that was kind of gross. I was like, would I ever feed that to my child?
yes, you would after being exhausted and not
Really?
sleep.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
I'll
so
get back
maybe
to
that's
my.
the truth.
Let
Okay,
me
so
tell
maybe that's the truth, but I was like, if I wouldn't, I would want this to be delicious, like,
you. I know.
slow roasted or air fry. I mean, it was something so stupid and small. And similarly, it was like, because, what I'm trying to come to is like really choosing, everything down to the minutia, which is probably not possible all the time.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like when people say, "Oh, well, I don't have time for self-care," or "What's self-care? I don't have time. I don't have time." And it doesn't it can take 3 minutes. Like I am a mom of 2 kids. I have no help before like and sometimes I really like to say this because I don't judge anyone and how they parent and how they mother if they have an entire village, if they have a staff of 20. I'm just letting people know that I'm coming from a place of saying you have time. I have 2 children. I have 0 help. I don't have parents that help me. My dad is a recovering narcissist. He still talks like he does not watch my kids, or he comes over to visit and then leaves like 30 minutes, 40 minutes later. But I don't have anyone helping me. It's my husband and I. So I find the time because you can make the time. And when I say find the time, it doesn't have to be an hour every day. Like I wake up like 35 minutes, 45 minutes for my kids. And even if all I do is close my eyes on my yoga mat for 5 minutes and listen to a Gabby Bernstein meditation, or I pull out a gratitude journal. And when I say journaling, I don't have time to write a book in the morning. I literally write 5 things that I am thankful for every morning. First 4 things are always the same. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for our health. I'm thankful for my cozy bed. I'm thankful for our dogs. And the fifth thing is anything that would be happening that day that I'm just like today, it was for being able to speak to Olivia. So I start my day off in a really grateful, thankful place because I know most likely as a parent, the day's going to be full of chaos and things are going to happen and everything's going to go as planned. And that's okay. And before I go and pick up my kids today from camp, I'm going to take about 10 minutes to do something for myself, whether it's to go sit outside and just breathe, whether it's to read one or two chapters in a book that
Mhm.
is talking about something that I need to hear right now. Maybe it's to go and watch 10 minutes of a series on Netflix that I haven't been able to finish. Whatever it is, it's going to sort of melt away the day that I've had before I go and show up for my next job, which is the mother of these two kids that are going to be wild and crazy and coming from camp. So I just don't, it's just not allowing like parts of ourselves to sort of go into other parts of ourselves. So like my children won't know if I had a stressful day today or I had an amazing day. They're gonna see a happy mom show up, and I'm gonna be happy because I did little things throughout the day to make myself calm and happy
That's
and grateful.
beautiful. Yeah.
You
So
don't have
then,
to retreat for a week. You don't have to
right.
make these big, elaborate, self-care, self-love things. Now, you can go on a trip. That sounds amazing. But
Yeah.
I guarantee you, going away for a week or 2 weeks and then coming back into just like regular life where a lot of us tend to go on autopilot and things like that and just working and busy and things like that. If you can create the little small rituals throughout your day that are just a couple minutes, those are the things. That consistency is what creates the change.
Absolutely agree with you. So much so. Um, I'm wondering, curiosity, like, so your kids are 6 and 9, and you talk about this healing journey, 2 years. Was there something in your life that was like this moment? And I'm sure there were many moments, but like after already having been a parent, that really forced you to dial in, like,
Yes.
and just to be like, I'm not being the parent I want to be or the partner I want to be. Like something has to change. And I say that knowing, as you shared your ages of your kids, that these things had already manifested. You had the family, you were in this relationship, all these things, but something in you still wasn't feeling settled. Can you go to that?
I've never shared this before, but I love this question. I know exactly when it was. COVID happened, the world shut down. All of my distractions, my activities, my volunteering, all of those things stopped. I was stuck at home, like everyone, with two young children. And I remember I had ordered a bunch of groceries and before things were really happening. And this big delivery came. And I had ordered some things that I had never ordered for my kids before. And I realized they were things I had eaten as a child. So
Mm,
I was here in this panic, in this chaos. I was scared what was happening. What's a pandemic? Everything was closing down. My kids and I are home. We were living in a condo at that time. So we were really restricted, like a family of four in a condo. You couldn't really go anywhere um, within the building. I had this grocery delivery and it was bagel bites. Those bagels with the little hot dogs, so unhealthy and toxic. Like I'm really trying to keep my kids on a healthy, organic kind of diet. And I ate them. And it triggered me so much because of things in my childhood as being an emotional eater that that evening I almost went to go throw up. And I
mm,
hadn't thought about these things hadn't triggered me. Bulimia, eating disorders, it had been, I mean, 10 years, it wasn't a part of my life or my thought. I was happy with my marriage and I just felt so full and I was working on myself and I was really taking my parenting seriously. And the feeling out of control with the pandemic happening and me subconsciously ordering this food that I ate as a child and just feeling so just like what's happening, what am I doing, and having no outside distractions. Um, I realized I was like, oh my God, what am I doing?
mm.
And that's when I literally probably for like a week was like breaking down in the bathroom and hiding, this from my kids and my family, realizing like, what was that about? Like, why did I just like eat this whole box of like bagel bites and want to go like grow up?
Yeah.
And I've never admitted this to anyone before, but it was the pandemic. It was literally locking me into a condo with kids and not knowing what was happening in the world to lose complete control that my eating disorder came to like visit me. It knocked on the door and I realized that wow, I've got to figure this out because I don't ever want to go down that road. I
Right.
mean, not only for myself, but I have children. Like I have a daughter. I think about these things all the time. I am huge on teaching my daughter about what it means to have a strong body and what a healthy body means. My daughter has never heard me on a diet or a cleanse or a fast. I don't use those words. I don't ever look in the mirror and say, oh my gosh, I feel fat. Like I am working my hardest, if anything,
Mhm.
with this aspect of raising my daughter, because I don't want for 1 minute of her life to waste time on an eating disorder or not loving her body. God, if I don't know if you feel this, but if I could go back throughout my life and take all those moments in time that I spent with bulimia or I spent with perfectionism, or if I spent, and if I took all this time, I don't know what I could have more accomplished at this point in my life. I mean, I'm grateful for what I have now. I have our health and my family, but I don't want my kids to like have to go down the self-help and the healing and the reparenting. I want them just to go off into the world when it's time for them to go and live their best effing life. I don't want them to have to heal from anything caused by me. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, that's first of all, thank you for sharing that. That was so vulnerable and beautiful. And I also relate, like in the out of control, the world shut down. I moved back to my parents' house in Miami Beach, and I had this fear, the
Yeah.
deepest fear of my childhood pantry. Because it's like this walk-in thing, and my mom has fluff and nerds and all this
Yeah.
shit that I would never eat.
Yeah,
And then
100%.
feeling stuck in my childhood home with this closet of stuff that like I used to stuff myself with. And it was such a thing. And so thank you for acknowledging that. And also thank you for speaking so openly to like creating a next generation of less body shaming, body love, like the fact that you don't use words cleanse, fast. I don't use those words. I don't use those tools. Like, because it's this culture has created so much emphasis on what you look like to the extent that now everything's, an injectable. But
Yeah.
the same thing, it is everything I believe is sourced from this idea that that you're capable, that you are. And you can't if you hate your body. You
Yeah.
can't if you constantly look at what you don't have. And I do believe it is our work
Yeah.
to inform, educate, and nourish the next generation and this generation to shift the way that they see themselves. And I think kudos to us for being dedicated to that, because I feel that from you, and you're such an inspiration, because I do want to have a family, and I'm going to remember this conversation because it is so important. It is so important, especially for young women, to understand that they are not their bodies. They are
No.
not their bodies. And yeah, and like holding those younger versions of us that like needed that reminder, like that we were not our bodies.
100%. First
Yeah.
of all, you're going to be an amazing mother, because to have a mother with such self-awareness and passion for, living a beautiful, authentic life. I mean, you're already going to be a rock star, Olivia.
Yeah.
That's what I want all mothers to feel and be like. I want them to know, like, your past doesn't define you. The courage to move it beyond it does. And to not allow your past to parent your children. I mean, when I look at my kids, I think, gosh, when I was 8, my daughter's 9, when I was 8 years old, I was writing in my diary, my favorite food was diet food. And I was writing things about my parents and what they did and what they were saying and what was going on. I was like, my daughter's biggest issue right now is like, will it rain in Miami and she can't play tennis? And I'm like, that makes me happy. She will come home to a healthy meal on the table, and she will have family sitting at the table with her, and we will share a meal together, and we will spend time together, and we'll laugh, and we will read bedtime stories tonight before we send them off to their dreams. And it's like
Mhm.
those simple, beautiful things are like the things I never had. You know what I mean? Like I can't remember bedtime stories. I can't remember family meals. I don't think we had them. Like those kinds of things, those connections are like all that really matters in life. Human connection, whether it's with your children, or your friends, or your spouses, or your parents, God
In
willing.
that, did you or how do you nourish your relationship? Like, obviously, you met this man back and forth. I mean, I love that he showed up in New York and was just like, comes in
He
because
showed up, wouldn't give up.
yeah, and I think that's so beautiful because there's also back to like this idea of PTSD. It's nothing feels safe, no one feels safe, and you don't have the proper discernment of what is not even real, but what is like or could be
Yeah,
love, because you don't know that you even believe in it yourself because like you've experienced so much pain. So like, I'm sure you put so much work into your family and your kids, but I also assume that there needs to be like proper nourishment of your relationship.
100%. And honestly, just to be completely transparent, we need to work on it harder because our kids take up, because we don't have a village and we don't have help. Our kids are really our life. Everyone's always telling me, you need the weekly date night. You need to go on a trip. We do probably like date nights every 2 weeks, but watching Netflix on the couch when the kids go to sleep, that
Yeah.
sometimes that's all we have. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, I married somebody that cares about his kids and his and the family and the family unit as much as I do. He grew up with his parents are still married 60 something years, like childhood home. We grew up completely opposite, but we both love our family. And so that's sort of our priority. So it doesn't, like I said, with the elaborate like things to have self-care, just to show your spouse love and spending time doesn't have to be these elaborate things either. Sometimes it's just like talking at night, laying in bed and like talking about our day and like just like expressing ourselves. But yeah, I mean, listen, he's been with me through my healing journey and my parent estrangement. We've been through a pandemic like everyone. My husband was diagnosed with cancer when my daughter was 2 months, so we had that. We've dealt with a lot. And my dad's down here and I'm a caretaker for him now because he's ill and his parents are older. So it's a constant juggle. I mean, life, I don't want anyone to think that like, oh, well, it must be easy because life is so smooth. Nothing is smooth about life, but that's okay because
Mhm.
it's things are always going to be happening. You can't wait to make the time. You just have to make the time. So you have to make time for your kids. You have to make time to love yourself and to make sure to check in and you're okay. You have to make time for your friends and your spouse. I mean, as long as you have joy in things, it shouldn't be that hard. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and I think that's really beautiful too, and, coming from the perspective of knowing what it feels like to just live in pain without even knowing it.
Yeah,
I think that's why, I found such gratitude for being where I am now, who I am now, like, regardless of anything else, it's like, once you sort of can see light, you
yeah,
want to see light in everything. So it's not necessarily, as you said, about the big things. It's about the small things every day in self-care, self-love. It's about, like you said, Netflix on the couch. Like, I think that's a really beautiful reminder because we do tend to gravitate towards like the thing or the
yeah,
vacation or I'll be happy when. And
yeah,
in my work and what I like to speak to is like, sure, those things matter, just as you said, but like, it's such a testament, like Netflix on the couch. It's like these glimmers of just love.
yeah. I love the word glimmers. It's all it is. It's like just glimmers of joy and love.
Yeah. In that, if you could go back and talk to like your 6-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Don't make me cry. Um, I would say I'm sorry. I would
Mm.
apologize to her because now that I'm 46, I know that she's never going to get that apology. Don't make me cry, Olivia. It's okay to cry also. It's when I see my 6-year-old self, my daughter looks just like me. So I think of my daughter. So it's so odd. But I would say I'm sorry because she's never gotten an apology from the people that she deserved from, her parents. But I would just say I'm sorry. And that forgiving myself, to let her forgive herself, I would just say I'm sorry and that it's going to be okay. It's going to
Yeah,
be okay.
I think that's, I think the one thing that so many of us forget or overlook is being able to do what you just did, to really know, because the younger versions of us are the ones that need us most.
Yeah.
Beyond, our own children or offspring, I think, as you say, our past does create our present. And when those parts of us show themselves, be it bagel bites in the pandemic or, um, I could give a million examples about myself. It's your reaction to whatever is disintegrated in your own body.
Yeah.
So you being able to say that and be able to like speak to the 6-year-old and even want to cry, I would push you and say that emotion wants to come out of you because
Yeah.
you no longer need it. Like
Yeah.
that sadness is on the other side of it is the joy that you already are. So like thank you for going there with me.
Thank you for asking me that. It really is when I will say when I started this journey, the first 30 days, about a year and a half ago, and I was like really committing when the pandemic and the bagel bites, it's gonna be so funny, the bagel bites, when all of that sort of triggered me and was sending me like down a spiral. I really started this whole healing journey with waking up every day for like a month, probably 30 days, waking up for like 5 minutes and just closing my eyes, sort of like almost meditating but just apologizing to myself I'm sorry for, I just, all the things that I was sorry for, how I treated myself, the people I dated, the toxic friends I allowed to influence me in my life, the bulimia, just everything. I'm sorry for the sadness. And I apologized to my inner child probably for like a month. And then I just started letting it all go. So
Mm.
again, it doesn't have to be these big elaborate things. Sometimes your journey can really just start in the floor of your bathroom or on your yoga mat, just speaking, to yourself and
Yeah.
acknowledging all the ways that even how you may have hurt yourself. So,
Yeah,
um,
I haven't told anyone this either, but since you shared something a year ago, so I had started everything in my life blew up. Probably it was end of 2020, and I share with you a bit about, dating this guy in New York City, and my studios were closed, the pandemic was happening, and the first time that we had sex, he said, "Did something happen to you?"
yeah,
And that was the crack that was like, first I got so defensive because I dated these guys who had convinced me to date them and I knew I didn't want to date them. So he was like manipulative and told me I was afraid of love. And I was like, okay, fine.
yeah,
And I wasn't ready to have sex, all these things. But his inquiry set me off on like, holy shit, did something happen to me? And so
yeah,
that really led me into, a 3-year journey of uncovering my subconscious of like 30 years.
yeah,
All that to say, I went through this whole thing and relived it and healed all of this stuff. And then a year ago, almost to the date, I got a phone call that basically gaslit my entire experience and told, how could you share this, your whatever. And there's a lot baked in there, but that's all I can really speak to it now. And 1 year ago, after 2 years of healing my whole life, after
yeah,
living in so much pain, I found myself on my bedroom floor again, wanting to die.
yeah,
1 year ago, 365 days. And I had healed my body. My hormones never worked properly. I never got a regular period because there was so much trauma in that space, to the extent where like I moved in with an ex-boyfriend. I moved in with him. I stopped getting like my body was always frozen. I'm
yeah,
37. My body was working finally. I got this phone call a year ago, a whole year. It was another year of healing. 1 year ago, I was on my floor wanting to die, thinking about like not wanting to be here anymore. And I got my period 1 year later till that happened. So the whole year, my body was frozen again. So, like, in a year, there's so much that can be done. It's also so interesting when, like, you think that, like, you're good. This was in the hero's journey, like, the last chance, like the final dragon came out to like slay me. And just like you on the bathroom floor, you had to sit with it and be like, only you can bring yourself out of that.
yeah,
And so, and it's not the like, again, it's not the vacation or the whatever, it's the every single day saying like choosing yourself.
yeah,
And I think just I mentioned the body thing because our bodies know.
yeah,
If you're living in a state of frozen or fight or flight or freeze, nothing works properly. Your digestion, your hormones, like your skin, your body, and whatever's showing up,
yeah,
it's literally there to serve you to be like, look deeper because there's something that's not working. So for anyone that's listening to this, like we're not here to like tell you to like go blow up your life or look at everything that's wrong with you. More so like to remind you that you're not alone and that even me sitting here who's had an amazing career and all of these other things and did all of this work only to a year ago, the hardest thing I ever did was to choose myself out of that because there was nowhere else to go. There was no one to run to at that point.
yeah. I'm
And
so happy.
yeah, no, it was just, thank you. Yeah, it was just this crazy thing. And so I just relate so deeply to showing the world one side of you and then deeply knowing that there was something that just wasn't working. It was just not working.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, also, you brought up really some beautiful things that, our mind, our body, it's the emotional, the spiritual, physical, it's all connected. So like when you're having these physical symptoms, you need to pay attention to them. An ongoing stomach aches or ongoing headaches or anxiety, like these are all little triggers. Like it's your body saying, hello, knock, knock, Olivia, Carie, like you're not dealing with something. Like I've been trying to tell you something for a while. So now you're getting sick. So maybe you'll pay attention to me. Like, I mean, you have to really pay attention to all those things. Also with regards to gaslighting, like I'm so sorry about that because I understand gaslighting 101,
Yeah.
like so many people. And I mean, you do get to a point where like your inner critic and the critics of others, the volume on their voices and even your own inner critic voice sort of becomes lower and your power becomes greater. So, when you're on your healing journey, it's not like the world stops or the narcissist will never come around or friends and family may never gaslight you, but you become more powerful. You become greater to where you don't react to those things or those people, because we're not going to be able to control other people. We can only control ourselves and our feelings and the work that we're doing.
Right.
So
And
bravo.
yeah, and with that too, which brings me, when you say reacting, my response to all of it beyond the like wanting to disappear was I just fed it with love. I didn't give it any pain. And
Yeah.
it took some time, and I didn't respond right away. And I just served it love because I believe the one thing that overcomes pain is love. And that love does begin with you. And that happening after 2 years after I had done all this deep work was a testament to the work I did to bring myself back to life. So firstly, thank you for being here and being so open and honest and vulnerable and so beautiful, but in a way that, like, of course you're physically beautiful, but there's something of like the depth of truth that you hold that reverberates and reflects. And it's going to make me cry, but we need more women like you in this world to show up in such a space of power and grace and humility and truth with cracks and all. So thank you for being that, because you're really leading the path and lighting the way.
Thank
Yeah.
you for
Oh my
having Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being who you are and all of the work and the sharing and the vulnerability that you allow all of us to see. Because by you speaking and sharing your stories, you help me. You actually help me and you empower me to want to keep going and wanting to share more and really be my authentic self. So thank you for everything that you're doing and for holding space for me today and my
God,
getting to share with your
an
community.
honor. Yeah. So where can people find you? Tell us everything.
You can find me my website, Instagram at Carie.fund. I have a podcast launching soon, which I hope you'll be a guest on. And yeah, you can Carie.fund. Find me.
Thank you so much. And I guess the best way to close this would be, if you're going to do anything today, right now or later, would be to find a moment of calm and say something nice to yourself and find a space of gratitude, and follow Carie, because she has incredible wisdom, and everything that you hear, she is. There is no falsehood here. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful.
Of course.